I've been a chef, art teacher, a history teacher. That's a stretch. There's a lot of desperation in Humboldt County, and that's what drives people to do more than one job. And luckily, I can do more than one job.
Silver, flash of fins, iridescent in the water as grain in the wind, grain in the wind.
It's time to taste the best food on the planet. Food for Thought explores the delicious stories from the Humboldt Nation. Meet the women and men who are growing it, foraging for it, raising it, preserving it, cooking it, and who share it with the rest of us. Today's guest is Henry Robertson from Henry's Olives.
These are cayenne garlics, fresh cayenne peppers. Thank you, Jacques and Amy. They grow for Henry's Olives. And I'm making up a mix that's going to hopefully be kind of spicy of Jacques and Amy's cayennes, and Dean and Missy grow a lot of peppers up in Maple Creek.
Well, Henry, tell us a little bit about your background, because you've done lots of different things. You're one of those kind of quintessential people. When I say Humboldt County has the most interesting people, I always think of you, because you've done a lot of things. I met you in woodshop class. You were my woodshop instructor.
I know.
Yeah. What other things have you done?
That was a long time ago. So I've been able to supplement my income. When I was doing woodworking, I was cooking at City Grill. I was an instructional aide at Cutton Elementary School. I've often had 3 to 5 different jobs going on. And then I was teaching at night at College of the Redwoods, woodworking. Mm-hmm. So now I'm really happy that I only have 2 or 3.
So I guess I was romanticizing your life.
Yeah, I'm lucky to have talents that allow me to do a few different things. I'd really rather not have to.
And how did you get started with the olives?
We used to have a place in Sawyer, and as soon as we bought it, CR asked me to teach this night furniture making program. They were opposite directions. So the dreams I had of moving to Sawyer and raising herbs and, doing that, planting olive trees, just kind of really made no sense, because that was a good job. And it was mostly what I was focused on at the time. Where we're standing right now was at my wood shop. My table saw was right here. Uh-huh. So that made sense to go with the CR thing, and it lasted, I think, 4 years, good while it lasted. So we were coming back from Sawyer. Every weekend we drove up there, and then Sunday late afternoon we drove back. And we'd always stop at the co-op in Arcata and buy our groceries for the week. Well, this one fall, they had some little flats of olives, and stuck in the end of every flat was a copy of a recipe from this Italian or Portuguese lady from Healdsburg. That's where they came from. And I thought, oh God, I have wanted to try this. Never had the opportunity. Boom, it's right in front of me. So I bought a flat, took it home, followed the directions, which are, like 2 weeks of work or 2 weeks of process. And then at the end of that 2 weeks, when they were finally ready, oh my God, they were just unbelievable. They were reminiscent of olives we had at a little restaurant in Mexico, homemade obviously, or I grew up with some Greek friends and they always had home-cured olives. So it was a flavor that I was familiar with, but you don't find very often.
I think till I had your olives, the only olives I had were those little canned black olives that you put on your fingers as a kid.
Sad.
And so when I tried your olives, it was like, this is a whole different food item that I'm not used to at all.
Well, California, during the revolution of canning, this was the industry, was in California. Lindsay and Oberti and Graber, were the giants in the field, and it was great what they did. People really love those olives, they have their place, but they stopped right there and put them in a can, and they could have done so much more with that product if they had flavored them or just taken some additional steps.
I think when you can things too, the processing is so long that it cooks them to death.
Right. I have one olive that sees some heat, that are dipped in boiling water. My black ripe, oil cured, shrunken,
super
salty. Those are the only ones. The others never see heat. Once they go through the curing process, they go into flavored brines and they immediately go in my walk-in. So they're immediately refrigerated, and they're always refrigerated up until the point of sales. So you get a very fresh tasting olive because of that. And I think it's why people say, oh, these are really different. I've never had an olive like this. Or I have the one olive, the lemon garlic, the most popular olive that I have in stores. It's like the gateway olive. People tell me they don't like green olives or they don't like olives. And at least 95% people that I get to try them go, oh, well, that's not what I thought an olive would taste like, or those are different. I like these. There's something in olives that people crave, whether it's the salt, the saline solution that we are made of, or the enzymes or what, but people crave them. People tell me they're addicted to them.
So how did you make the leap then from this one batch of olives that took you 2 weeks, and you must have said that's an incredible amount of time to process a food item, but the outcome was so great that you had to do this again and again. And then how did you make that leap to turn into a business?
That's a real good question.
Yeah.
Of course, that 2 weeks of process, you're not standing over them all the time that's happening. There's a lot of just soaking and rinsing. And I think that first year I went back and bought another flat because it was obvious this isn't going to last very long. I did a second flat that year. I kind of doubled the amount the next year. This third or fourth year, I didn't have enough money to even do it. And the co-op was continuing to either get those flats, or they introduced me eventually to Greg Gephardt, who is my current grower. He's in Orland, next door to Chico, and he's all certified organically grown. It was kind of a natural progression of growth, pretty slow at first. My wood shop was still a wood shop. I built a deck on the side of my wood shop, and I was curing olives outside on the deck for a couple of years. The wife doesn't appreciate that so much when you start to get 20 buckets out there.
Well, I'm just imagining a truck pulling up.
No, at this point, I had to go drive to Arcata with my truck and load up boxes of olives. Back then I was buying 400 pounds at a time and then bring them home and do it. And when I built the deck on the side of my shop, then I had a long 4 to 5 foot wide place where I could put a ton of olives in buckets. 80 buckets is a ton of olives. So it just kept growing. And it wasn't growing because we were eating lots of olives. I mean, we were, but friends and friends of friends started wanting them more and more. And that's what grew it. Really, demand has grown the business. Where I am right now with it, I have a very limited amount of space. And so I can only produce so much out of this space. I'm happy. The amount I do right now is a lot of work. And right now I do between 4 and 5 tons a year. Olives are alternative bearers. Some trees will produce a big crop and then a little crop, and so you can't count on ever having all the trees produce at once and getting this, huge crop. Nobody seems to be doing a refrigerated product, and that must be the reason that people really like my olives, because it presents a little different final product.
Do you think people are getting more of an appreciation of more types of flavors of olives?
I do see that. Still, to this day, the lemon garlic, the yellow label jar, outsells everything else, and it's the mildest one. We call it our gateway olive because people that don't like olives always seem to like it. And I tell them after they taste it that it'll lead to harder usage. And
you'll move them up.
And I see that happen. I can't give them a Kalamata right away, or it might just totally scare them away from the whole thing. But I do see they finally start liking brine-cured olives, things that have a little bitter edge maybe to them, or a real intense flavor.
I think the very first Kalamata olive I ate, it probably took me an hour to eat it. It was just so intense, and I'd never experienced. I thought a black olive, it was Kalamata and it was dark,
right.
And I thought it was going to be very similar, and it was just so impossible. And now I could just sit down with a cup of them and eat them. It's just amazing how your tastes change.
I have made the mistake with people before of giving them a Kalamata right after that, and that ended it.
Too much.
Too much, too soon. But it goes the same for me, too. I mean, I loved all those jarred olives are pretty much milder. And now I really go for the more Mediterranean style that are brine cured, and they often have a little bitter edge, and they're just much more intense. Some of them are fermented, so you get that fermentation flavor there too, and that intensity.
Now, one of the questions I think you're probably asked quite a bit is, where do you grow your olives? I mean, I think people assume because you're producing them in Humboldt County that you're growing the olives.
And I can't imagine having that as part of the whole business.
It's enough just
it's totally enough.
Yeah.
It's enough wrangling olives from growers to get them to my shop. I do not grow any olives. I have 3 olive trees, which are in pots. One's a bonsai and 2 are in front of my doors. And they don't produce anything in Humboldt County, but olives can be produced in Humboldt County. Willow Creek, that area in southern Humboldt, a lot of people have put in oil olives in southern Humboldt as well as the Willow Creek area. And I do get some olives from Gwinnett Vineyards. Sharon and David have a little over 100 trees, oil varieties, Italian oil varieties. And I've been curing those since the first olives came on the trees. The first time we cured them was 2/3 of a gallon. I mean, it was great fun. It was very easy.
It's a specialty item.
A specialty item. And now, the last couple of years, we did about 17 5-gallon buckets.
Oh, okay.
And this year, the crop is huge. And it's the first year that oil is going to be made from them. The Gwinnett's bought a press last year.
Okay. There's a lot of things can affect an artisan product like yours. I'm thinking, just what are the olives like from year to year? What's the weather like? What's the soil where they're grown? Just a lot of different factors. How is that in trying to make a semi-consistent product?
It's a dance.
It is.
It's always, that's a big concern every year. This time of year, I get a little stressed out because I have one main producer in Orland. And this year, there's been some issues with the olives. Fruit set has been much lighter. I've been told by other growers, too, that it's just not a good year for olives over there. And I'm not sure exactly why. We are seeing global warming trends, and that's affected the valley. And California's been in a drought situation for several years. That doesn't help the size production. Olives like water to size up, for table olives especially. And there is a pest, one major pest for olives they call simply the olive fly, and it has really devastated certain areas of Northern California.
Mm-hmm. And I think when olives don't meet your standards, I mean, you don't have a huge factory where you've got air blowing out the ones that aren't, the right ones. There's a lot of handwork in the work that you do.
Yeah,
it's all
handwork.
Yeah.
Olives, whether they have an olive fly in them or for some other reason, wind damage, we try to present olives that look nice as well. People like to pick something up and, not be grossed out about it.
Of course.
So we do our very best to, put out a good product. So there's a lot of hand sorting when there are issues. Sometimes I feel like I've seen every olive that goes through the place.
I think I've seen you at work, and I think sometimes you've handled every olive at least once.
Yeah. If I don't see it, there's the last chance is when they're getting jarred up, and whoever's doing the jarring, my wife or someone else, they see it at that point because every olive's going right in front of their eyes, going in that jar. Right. So a few get pulled out then.
Yeah, which is kind of nice to have, kind of a more hand operation than something that a machine is doing. You've got a set of eyes on it at each stage of the process to make sure that you're getting a quality product into your containers. And I think another thing I think people don't realize about a small operation like yours is the amount of physical work, because olives weigh a lot. And olives, when they're curing, they're in containers that weigh a lot. And you sometimes have them stacked like 5 levels high.
Individually, they don't weigh very much. But oftentimes they come delivered in 40 to 60 pound boxes. And as we're getting older, we're putting less in the boxes. both my main grower and myself. So it's a little easier, and those have to get dumped into a vat or into a bucket. And if I do a full vat, I only do 500 pounds in a vat. That's 20 5-gallon buckets. So you're handling that weight so many times. By the end of that cycle of that 500 pounds, you've probably moved 4 tons.
No need to go to the gym. Okay. So I see you at a lot of the farmers markets, and it seems like that's a great way to introduce people to your product and to you, because they get to meet the person who's curing the olives each and every time you're out there. It seems like you've met a lot of people, you've become friends with a lot of people through your olive business.
I don't always remember people's names, but faces I do. And the markets are a great way to demo stuff. So I don't usually bother to demo in stores because I'm out there in the public all the time, at least 2 days a week, hawking olives, and I always have samples. You know, some years there's a shortage of olives, or at least getting them to me. I feel like I'm not getting enough olives because I'm running a business, and my business is, bottom line is to make money. I'll do other things. I started doing sauerkraut. I have a fig balsamic sauce, and I do preserved lemons. And all those were kind of natural progressions. I use lemons in my products, so lemons were around. And the balsamic vinegar is the only product I have besides herbs and spices that is not domestic, that is not Northern California even.
So you really try to source locally.
I do.
And you have with your sauerkraut.
All the batches of sauerkraut I've made have been either Eureka Arcata grown or Willow Creek grown. We have great producers of cabbage and greens and so many good things here.
Right. And I've seen you pick the lemons off your tree for some of your products.
We do. Sometimes we do Meyer lemon infused oil. We have 3 big trees on the south side of our house, and they produce so incredibly well, and a few olives too.
This is Jennifer Bell, and I've been talking with Henry Robertson, owner of Henry's Olives. Thank you so much, Henry.
Yahoo!
Food for Thought is a DreamMaker project of the Ink People Center for the Arts and is produced by Jennifer Bell and Jessica Eden. Some of the audio for this project was recorded in the KHSU studios.
These are from Orleans. Claudia's Herbs, Vaughn and Claudia. And I believe they are an Arbequina, but I'm not 100% sure, and they are not 100% sure what they are. But they're good. Smoky.
Smoky.